The sun was shining brightly over the old city of Belford, a place known for its calm streets, royal gardens, and centuries-old traditions. It was not just another city. Belford was home to one of the oldest royal families in Europe, and people there respected discipline, manners, and quiet pride. They loved their culture and had deep respect for their royal guards, who stood in silence every day outside the Grand Palace. On that very morning, a private jet landed at Belford's airport. From it stepped out a young man named Daniel Trump. He was the only son of a famous businessman and former leader, used to cameras, attention, and privilege. Daniel was 24, confident, tall, and always carried himself like the world belonged to him. He wore dark sunglasses, a white shirt, and a smile that said he expected everyone to recognize him. Daniel had come to Belford as part of a cultural exchange program arranged between his father's foundation and the Belford royal family. It was supposed to be a short, friendly visit, a chance for him to learn about history, meet leaders, and attend royal events. But Daniel was not thinking about learning or culture. He was thinking about the attention he would get, the luxury he would enjoy, and the respect he expected from everyone. When Daniel stepped out of the airport gate, a small group of local reporters tried to take photos, but unlike his home country, people in Belford were not impressed by famous names. Here, respect was earned, not demanded. A man from the royal office, dressed in a navy suit, came forward to greet him. "Welcome to Belford, Mr. Trump," said the man politely. "I'm Harold, your guide for this visit. The royal family sends their greetings." Daniel nodded without even taking off his sunglasses. "Good. Make sure everything's arranged properly. I don't like waiting." Harold smiled patiently, used to dealing with guests who expected too much. "Of course, sir. The palace car is waiting for you." The drive to the palace took about 30 minutes. Belford streets were lined with flower stalls, small cafes, and old buildings that had been standing for hundreds of years. Daniel looked outside, unimpressed. "Looks old," he said. "Doesn't anyone here build something new?" Harold smiled again. "Sir, our city believes in preserving history. Every building tells a story." Daniel leaned back. "Well, it's time for them to build a new story then." When they reached the palace gates, Daniel finally looked interested. The palace was grand, with tall towers, marble steps, and golden crests shining in the sunlight. In front of the main gate stood 2 royal guards in red coats and silver helmets. They held long ceremonial spears and didn't move an inch. Their eyes looked straight ahead, calm and proud. Daniel got out of the car, stretched his arms, and smirked. "Now this is better," he said. Cameras from the local media were still nearby, covering his arrival. As Daniel walked toward the gate, he stopped right in front of one of the guards. The guard, tall and serious, continued to stand in silence, not reacting at all. Daniel stood there for a few seconds, waiting for something, but nothing happened. Finally, he laughed lightly and said, "You can salute me, soldier." The guard didn't move. His eyes stayed fixed forward as his duty required. Daniel frowned. "I said salute me. Don't you know who I am?" Harold, standing a few steps behind, cleared his throat quickly. "Sir, the royal guards do not break formation. Even members of the royal family are not saluted outside of ceremony. It's their rule." Daniel turned to Harold with surprise. "So you're saying they can't salute me?" Harold replied softly, "It's not about you, sir. It's about the respect of their uniform. They are trained to follow rules, not faces." Daniel didn't like that answer. He had always lived in a world where people smiled when he entered, where waiters rushed to serve him, and where even adults tried to please him because of his family name. He had never met someone who could stand in front of him and simply ignore him. It hurt his pride. He took a step closer to the guard and said in a louder voice, "I am the son of a very important man. Show some respect." The guard stayed silent. Tourists standing nearby began to watch the scene. Harold stepped forward quickly and whispered, "Sir, please, let's go inside. The palace staff is waiting." Daniel stared at the guard one more time, his pride wounded, then finally turned and walked toward the palace entrance. He said nothing, but his face showed clear irritation. Inside, the royal staff welcomed him politely, and the visit continued as planned. But in Daniel's mind, the guard's silence stayed. He couldn't stop thinking about how someone had dared to ignore him in public. That evening, Daniel was given a grand room inside the guest wing of the palace. It was beautiful, filled with art, golden lamps, and fresh flowers. Still, he couldn't stop complaining. "The internet here is slow," he said to Harold. "The food is too simple. Why don't they have private chefs for guests like me? Harold answered politely. This palace serves traditional meals, sir. They keep everything simple out of respect for old customs. Daniel sighed. Customs are boring. People should move forward, not live in the past. Later that night, as he stood by the window looking at the garden, Daniel saw the royal guards again. They were changing shifts, moving like clockwork, silent and serious. He frowned again. They really don't talk? He asked. Harold smiled. Not during duty. They are trained to stay quiet no matter what happens. Daniel shook his head. Strange country. Before going to bed, Daniel posted a photo of the palace on his social media with the caption, "Nice old place. Needs some modern touch." The post got thousands of likes instantly, but also a few comments from Belford locals saying, "Respect our traditions and our guards are symbols, not servants." Daniel ignored those comments, but they made him a bit curious. The next morning, Daniel was invited to attend a short tour inside the Palace Museum, where he learned about Belford's royal history. He listened half-heartedly as the guide spoke about loyalty, service, and humility. He wasn't interested until one small story caught his attention. The guide said, "Every royal guard swears to protect the kingdom with honor, not ego. Even the king himself is not above their oath. That is what keeps Belford strong." Daniel tilted his head slightly. Not above their oath? So even the king can't tell them what to do? The guide smiled. Only during their duty. Respect is mutual here, not one-sided. Daniel didn't say anything. For the first time since his arrival, he stayed quiet. The words stayed with him longer than he expected. That evening, during a formal dinner with some young members of the royal family, Daniel tried to show his charm. He made jokes, talked about his lifestyle, and tried to impress everyone with his stories of luxury cars and private islands. Some smiled politely, but most just listened quietly. They were kind, but not amazed. In Belford, money and fame did not earn admiration. Behavior did. As the dinner ended, one of the young royals said kindly, "Mr. Trump, tomorrow you will visit the royal training ground. You will see how our guards prepare every day. I hope it gives you a new view of service and respect." Daniel smiled and said, "Sure. I'll see how serious they really are." He had no idea that the next day would change the way he saw himself and the meaning of respect forever. The next morning started with soft golden sunlight falling through the tall palace windows. Daniel woke up later than planned and looked outside. He saw the wide green palace garden shining with dew, and the sound of birds filled the air. For a moment, he felt calm, but then he remembered his schedule. Harold knocked gently on the door and entered with a polite smile. "Good morning, sir. The royal family has arranged a visit to the guard training ground. They will begin soon." Daniel stretched his arms lazily. "I hope they have something interesting to show me. Watching soldiers march sounds boring," Harold replied kindly. "You might be surprised, sir. The training here is not only about marching, it is about discipline, patience, and respect." Daniel put on his stylish jacket and dark glasses again. "Let us see if they can impress me." A royal car was waiting outside to take them to the training area. It was a short drive through a narrow road lined with tall trees. The air smelled fresh and clean, unlike the busy city Daniel was used to. When they arrived, he saw a wide-open ground surrounded by old stone walls. Dozens of guards in uniform were practicing in silence, moving with perfect coordination. Their steps were even, their eyes focused, their faces calm. Daniel stepped out of the car and looked around. They all looked the same. He said lightly, "How do they even stay awake doing this every day?" A senior officer named Captain Rowan approached them. He was tall with a calm face and sharp eyes. His uniform was spotless and his voice was steady. "Welcome, Mr. Trump. It is an honor to have you here. Today we will show you the tradition and strength of our royal guards." Daniel gave a small nod. "Thank you, Captain, I am sure. It will be interesting." Captain Rowan guided him through the training area. The guards were lifting shields, climbing walls, and practicing silent drills. Every move seemed calculated and full of purpose. Daniel watched quietly for a while, trying to understand what made it so special. It looked simple to him. He whispered to Harold, "They are just walking in straight lines. It is not that hard." Harold smiled. "It looks simple, sir, but behind that calm movement is years of training. They learn how to control their body and mind completely." Daniel shrugged. I could do that in a week. Captain Rowan heard him and smiled gently. Perhaps you would like to try, sir. We have a light uniform ready for guests who wish to experience the training. Daniel looked surprised. You mean I should join them? Rowan nodded. Only for a short time. It might give you a better understanding of what they do. Harold looked a little worried, but Daniel laughed. All right, fine, I will. Do it. It will make a good story for my followers. He changed into the simple training clothes that the staff brought for him. The uniform was heavier than it looked. The boots were firm and the belt tight. As soon as he stepped onto the field, he felt the ground uneven and rough. The captain gave a short order and the guards began another silent march. Daniel joined them, trying to copy their steps. At first he found it amusing, but after a few minutes he began to feel tired. The sun was warm, and the uniform felt hotter with every step. He tried to move his arms and legs in rhythm, but he was always slightly off balance. The guards continued perfectly without a word. Their faces never changed, and their focus never broke. Daniel started, breathing harder, and his movements became slower. Captain Rowan stood nearby, observing quietly. You see, sir, it is not about power. It is about control. Daniel nodded but did not speak. His pride did not let him quit. After another 10 minutes, the march ended and he stepped aside, wiping sweat from his forehead. He laughed lightly, trying to hide his tiredness. Not bad for my first time, right? Rowan smiled. You did well, sir. For them it is not about one day. It is about every day. They wake up before sunrise and train for hours without complaint. Their respect is built on consistency, not position. Daniel looked at the guards again. They stood still, their eyes fixed forward. Each one looked strong, not because of their size, but because of their calmness. He felt a small sense of respect rising inside him, though he did not admit it aloud. After the training demonstration, Captain Rowan invited Daniel to the small hall beside the field. There was tea and light food prepared. Daniel sat down, tired but curious. Rowan said, The uniform teaches humility, sir. When you wear it, you are part of something bigger than yourself. You learn to follow before you lead. Daniel smiled weakly. You talk like a teacher, Captain. Rowan replied calmly. Discipline is the first teacher of respect, sir. Without discipline, privilege becomes pride, and pride blinds people from learning. Those words touched Daniel more than he expected. He remembered the guard who refused to salute him at the gate. He thought again about how calm that man had been, how he had not reacted at all. It began to make sense now, before leaving the training ground. Daniel noticed the same guard from the palace gate, standing at a distance. He was cleaning his helmet and setting it carefully on a wooden stand. Daniel walked closer and said politely, I think I saw you yesterday. The guard looked at him and nodded once. Yes, sir, I was on duty at the main gate. Daniel hesitated, then asked, Why? Didn't you salute me when I arrived? The guard answered simply, Because, sir, I was on duty, and our rule is to salute only during ceremony or when ordered by the captain. It is not personal. Daniel looked into his eyes. The guard's face was calm, his voice steady and respectful. There was no pride or rudeness, just honesty. Daniel nodded slowly. I understand now. You were only following your rule. The guard smiled lightly. Yes, sir. It is our honor to serve through rules, not emotion. That is what keeps the Royal Guard respected. Daniel thanked him quietly and turned back toward the car. Harold followed silently, but he could see something had changed in Daniel's expression. He looked thoughtful instead of arrogant. On the way back to the palace, Daniel asked Harold, Do you think they actually enjoy this life, standing still, training every day, no fame, no luxury? Harold replied softly, Yes, sir, because they believe respect comes from service, not comfort. They find peace in doing their duty well. It gives them meaning. Daniel looked out the car window at the green hills passing by. For the first time he felt small in a good way. He realized that his life had been filled with things money could buy, but not with the peace that these guards seemed to have. That evening during dinner, Daniel was quieter than usual. The young royals noticed the change. He listened more and spoke less. When one of them asked how he liked the training, he smiled gently. It was harder than it looked. I learned that silence can teach more than speeches. The prince sitting beside him said kindly, "Then you have already learned the most important lesson of Belford. Our people speak less but mean more." Everyone smiled, and the dinner continued in a friendly way. Daniel went back to his room that night feeling something new inside. It was not pride or frustration. It was reflection. He looked at his phone and thought of posting about his experience, but then stopped. He realized some moments are not for showing off. They are for understanding. He looked again out the window. The same guard from the morning was standing at his post, motionless under the moonlight. Daniel watched for a long time, then whispered to himself, "Maybe real strength is quiet after all." He slept that night with a calm mind and a small smile, unaware that the next day would bring him a challenge that would test this new understanding more deeply. The next morning the palace was full of gentle light. The smell of flowers from the royal garden floated through the air. Daniel woke up early for the first time since his arrival. He felt different, refreshed, and curious. He opened the window and watched the guards changing their posts again. Every move they made seemed calm and full of meaning. Harold entered the room with a cheerful tone. "Good morning, sir. The king has invited you to attend a small ceremony at noon. It is to honor the guards who have completed 10 years of service." Daniel turned around, surprised. "The king himself attends their ceremony." Harold nodded. "Yes, sir. He believes that every person who serves the country deserves to be thanked by name. The king never misses this event." Daniel smiled slightly. "That is impressive. In my world, such things are often handled by assistants." Harold replied gently, "In Belford, service is sacred, sir. It is not just a job, it is a promise." After breakfast, Daniel dressed more simply than before. He chose a plain suit and no sunglasses. He felt he should look respectful. The car took him to the royal courtyard where chairs were arranged in neat rows. People from the palace and families of the guards were already seated. The atmosphere was peaceful and full of pride. Daniel took a seat near the front beside the young prince he had met earlier. The ceremony began with a soft melody played by the royal band. Then the guards entered marching in their perfect lines. Their boots touched the ground in one rhythm. The king stood tall and greeted them warmly. His voice was calm but strong. "Your loyalty keeps our nation steady. You serve not for praise, but for honor." Everyone clapped politely. Daniel felt something inside him shift. He had seen many grand events before, but none that felt so honest. There was no noise, no rush, no glamour, only respect. After the speeches, the king turned toward the guests. "We have a special visitor from abroad. Today, Mr. Daniel Trump, the son of a great businessman. We welcome him and hope he learns about our values during his stay." Daniel stood and bowed slightly. The crowd applauded lightly. He felt humbled instead of proud. For the first time, he wished to earn respect instead of expecting it. After the ceremony, Captain Rowan approached him with a thoughtful look. "Sir, His Majesty would like to invite you to spend one day as a trainee guard tomorrow. It will help you understand the discipline from inside, not as a guest, but as a learner." Daniel blinked. "You mean I have to train like them all day?" Rowan smiled. "Only for one day, sir. You will not be forced to complete the full tasks, but you will share their routine. It will be a valuable lesson if you accept it." Daniel thought for a moment. His pride wanted to refuse, but something inside told him to say yes. He nodded. "All right, Captain, I will do it." The next morning began before sunrise. The palace grounds were still, covered with mist when Daniel reached the training area. He wore the full guard uniform, which felt heavier than before. Captain Rowan greeted him. "Welcome to a day in the life of a guard, sir. Remember, there are no shortcuts here." The first task was running around the courtyard. Daniel tried to keep up, but after a few laps, he was already breathing heavily. The guards moved in silence with no complaint. Daniel pushed himself, trying not to give up. He could feel sweat on his forehead and his legs burning, but he continued. After the run, they moved to balance drills. Each guard carried a long wooden pole on their shoulders while walking over a narrow wooden beam. Daniel tried to copy them but slipped halfway and almost fell. A guard standing nearby caught his arm and helped him regain balance. The man smiled kindly. "Keep your eyes forward, sir, not down. That is the secret." Daniel nodded, breathing hard but grateful for the help. He noticed how none of them laughed or mocked him. They treated him as one of their own, and that touched him deeply. Later came the meditation session. All the guards sat in silence under a large tree. Captain Rowan spoke softly. "In this moment, you are not thinking of yourself. You are part of something greater. The silence connects you to duty and peace." Daniel closed his eyes. The world around him became still. He could hear the soft wind, the rustle of leaves, and his own breath. For the first time in his life, he felt quiet from inside his mind, stopped rushing with thoughts about fame or image. He understood why the guards looked so peaceful. After the session, the captain said, "You see, sir, the strength of a guard does not come from his body, it comes from his heart and discipline. When you can control your mind, you can serve with respect." Daniel nodded slowly. "I think I understand now, Captain." As the sun rose higher, the last part of the training began. The guards practiced coordination drills, moving together as if they were one person. Daniel watched in admiration. Their focus, their timing, and their calmness looked beautiful. At the end of the training, Captain Rowan clapped his hands. "Today we have a new trainee among us, Mr. Daniel Trump. He has shown courage and humility. By joining our routine, let us thank him for his effort." All the guards raised their hands to their hearts in respect. Daniel felt a lump in his throat. He stood straight and said quietly, "Thank you for letting me be part of this. I learned that real respect is not demanded. It is earned through effort and patience." Everyone nodded with gentle smiles. The moment was simple yet powerful. Later that day, Daniel met the king in a private garden. The king was an older man with kind eyes and a gentle smile. He motioned Daniel to sit beside him on a wooden bench. The garden was quiet, filled with the sound of fountains and birds. The king spoke softly. "I heard you trained with my guards today. How did you find the experience?" Daniel took a deep breath. "It was difficult, but I learned more in one day than I did in many years. I saw how discipline creates peace. I used to think power came from being above others, but now I see it comes from standing with them." The king smiled warmly. "That is a wise thought, young man. People often mistake privilege for strength, but true strength is humility. The guard who can stand still in the rain without complaint has more power than the man who commands without understanding." Daniel nodded. "I met that guard at the gate on my first day. He taught me that following the rule is not disrespect, it is honor." The king looked pleased. "Then he has done his duty well." They sat together in silence for a while, watching the fountain. Water fall in soft circles. Daniel felt peaceful, as if a heavy weight had lifted from his shoulders. Before leaving the garden, the king said kindly, "Tomorrow we will have a charity event in the city. I would like you to join me. It is a tradition for guests to serve food to the common people. It reminds us that leadership is service, not privilege." Daniel smiled and agreed. "I would be honored to help." That night, as he prepared to sleep, he thought about everything he had seen. The guards, the captain, the king, each had shown him something new about life. He realized that respect was not a gift. It was a responsibility. He stood by the window once again, watching the night sky. The palace lights reflected softly on the ground. He saw the guards standing still under the stars and whispered, "They are stronger than I ever imagined." His journey in Belford was slowly changing him from the inside. He did not yet know that the next day would test his new understanding in a way he never expected. The morning of the charity event was bright and peaceful. The palace courtyard was filled with quiet activity. Long tables were being arranged near the palace gates. Covered dishes, fruits, and bread were being brought out by the royal staff. The air smelled of fresh flowers and baked food. The event was meant for the poor and the working people of Belford, who came once a month to receive free meals and blessings from the royal family. Daniel stood near the window of his room watching everything. He was dressed in simple clothes this time. A plain white shirt, brown trousers, and no jewelry. His reflection in the mirror looked different. The proud young man who had arrived a few days ago seemed far away. Harold entered with a friendly smile. "Good morning, sir. His Majesty is waiting near the courtyard. You will help with serving today. The king wants you to experience our way of sharing." Daniel nodded with a small smile. "I am ready, Harold." When he reached the courtyard, the king greeted him warmly. "Good morning, Daniel. Today we will serve the people who serve our city. Remember, this is not charity, it is respect. Everyone here deserves the same kindness." Daniel bowed slightly. "Yes, Your Majesty, I understand. Rose of A." People had already begun to gather outside the palace gate. They were not dressed richly, but their faces showed quiet happiness. Children smiled at the sight of the royal flags. The guards stood at their usual posts, calm and disciplined, keeping order. Daniel joined the royal family behind the tables where food was placed. The king began first handing out bread with his own hands to the people. Each person bowed slightly in thanks. Then the queen and the young prince joined. Daniel followed, trying to copy their grace. At first he was shy, but as he handed food to an old man who thanked him with watery eyes, Daniel felt something warm inside. The simple act of giving made him feel more alive than any applause he had received before. Hours passed and Daniel continued serving with a smile. He noticed how the guards who stood nearby also helped guide the crowd. They did not see this duty as small. Everything they did was with care and calmness. He began to admire their quiet strength. Even more after the meal, the king invited Daniel to walk with him through the market streets near the palace. They moved without large security, just 2 guards behind them. The streets were full of life. Small shops sold colorful cloth baskets, fruit, and handmade goods. Children played in the corners and old men talked near the fountain. Daniel was surprised by the simplicity. "Everyone looks so happy here, Your Majesty. There is peace even without luxury." The king smiled. "Happiness does not need gold, Daniel. It needs purpose. When people live with honesty, they feel light." As they walked further, they reached a small school. The king stopped and greeted the children who ran to him with bright eyes. Their teacher thanked him for the donation that helped build new desks. Daniel watched in silence. The king bent down to speak to the children at their eye level. His kindness felt real, not forced. Daniel whispered, "You do not act like a ruler, you act like a father." The king smiled. "A ruler must first be a servant. Only then can he understand what people need." Those words stayed in Daniel's mind. Later in the afternoon, the king and Daniel returned to the palace. When they entered the gate, Daniel saw the same guard who had refused to salute him on his first day. The guard stood straight, his eyes forward. Daniel walked toward him and said softly, "Good afternoon, I remember you still at your post." The guard smiled politely. "Yes, sir. My duty hours continue till sunset." Daniel looked at him with respect. "You have been standing since morning, that is a long time." The guard replied calmly, "Service feels short when it is done with heart, sir." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. He had begun to understand that kind of peace. That evening, a special dinner was arranged for the royal family and guests. Daniel was invited again. The king thanked him for joining the event. "You have shown good spirit, Daniel. Today you served the people with kindness. That is the real meaning of leadership."
Daniel felt humble. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I think I learned more from this one day than from all the speeches I have heard in my life." The king smiled. "Learning never stops. The moment we think we know everything, we fall."
From wisdom. During dinner, the conversation turned toward traditions. The young prince spoke about the upcoming royal parade, where guards march through the city once a year. It was an event of great pride and honor. People from all over the country came to watch. The king turned to Daniel. "You are welcome to join the parade as a guest if you wish. It will happen in 2 days. You will see the spirit of our people." Daniel agreed happily. "I would love to attend. It will be an honor." After dinner, Daniel went for a walk in the palace garden. The moon was full. The fountains sparkled under the light. He saw Captain Rowan walking toward him carrying a file. Rowan stopped and said politely, "Good evening, sir. You did well today, the guards. Respect your effort." Daniel smiled. "Thank you, Captain. I was only doing what everyone else did. It felt good to serve for once instead of expecting service." Rowan nodded. "That is the first step toward understanding duty, sir. When you work, without expecting reward, you find peace." They walked together for a while, and then Rowan said, "Tomorrow you will have a rehearsal if you wish to walk beside the king in the parade. You will learn our march pattern. It is simple but meaningful, Daniel." "Accepted. I will be there, Captain." That night, Daniel could not sleep easily. He thought about his time in Belford, the guards, the king, the people. Everything was teaching him something. His heart felt lighter, but his mind was full of reflection. He opened his notebook and wrote quietly, "Respect is not what others give you, it is what you give first," the next morning. Daniel woke early again. He joined Captain Rowan and the guards at the parade ground for the rehearsal. The city square was being decorated. Flags of Belford waved in the gentle breeze. Musicians practiced soft tunes. The guards marched again in perfect lines. Rowan explained, "Each step has meaning, sir. The left foot shows unity. The right shows loyalty. Together they create balance." Daniel practiced walking beside the guards. It was not easy to match their rhythm, but he tried his best. He could feel their quiet pride and patience. Around him, everyone moved with the same focus. There was no competition, only harmony. After practice, Rowan said kindly, "You have improved, sir. Tomorrow will be special for you." Daniel thanked him and looked at the city from the high terrace. The streets were calm now, but tomorrow they would be filled with cheering people. For the first time in his life, he wanted to be part of something, not to stand above it. That evening, as the sun set, Daniel visited the king one more time to confirm his role in the parade. The king looked pleased. "You have shown humility and courage, Daniel. I am proud of how you have changed. These lessons will serve you for life." Daniel bowed respectfully. "Your Majesty, you have taught me that real honor has nothing to do with power. It lives in kindness and discipline." The king smiled. "Remember that always. The world respects those who respect others first." As Daniel left the king's chamber, he passed by the corridor where portraits of past rulers hung. Each one looked noble but serious. He wondered if they too had learned through humility, rather than pride. He returned to his room and stood by the window again, watching the guards take their positions under the night sky. The same guard from his first day was still there, standing straight and still. Daniel whispered quietly, "Tomorrow, I will stand with them, not above them." He felt proud, but in a new way, not of his name, but of what he was becoming. Inside, he knew that the next day's parade would be a moment he would never forget, because it would not be about fame, but about respect. The next morning, the palace grounds were calm and bright. The golden sun reflected on the marble walls, and the birds sang softly in the garden. Daniel woke up early, something that rarely happened before. He sat on the bed quietly, thinking about everything that had happened. For the first time, he did not think about his father's name or his wealth. He thought about the meaning of respect, effort, and self-worth. When he looked in the mirror, he did not see the same proud and careless person. His face looked calm, but his eyes carried a new understanding. He knew that something inside him had changed. He had come to the kingdom expecting attention and praise, but he had found something far more valuable: humility and respect. He stepped outside his room and walked toward the palace courtyard. The air was fresh and the guards were already at their posts. As he walked past them, he noticed how they stood tall and silent, ready for duty. Their discipline impressed him now more than their uniforms ever had. At the gate, he saw guard Thomas, the same man he had ordered to salute him on the first day. Daniel stopped and walked toward him. Thomas noticed him but did not change his posture. His eyes remained fixed straight ahead, calm and strong. Daniel stood in front of him for a moment, unsure how to begin. Then, in a soft and clear voice, he said, "I was wrong that day." Thomas blinked once, slightly surprised, but he did not move. Daniel continued, "I did not understand what your salute meant. I thought it was just a way to show power. But now I know it is about honor, about what you earn through service. I did not earn it, but I wanted it anyway." The guard remained silent for a few seconds, then said quietly, "Understanding is the first step to earning respect, sir." Daniel smiled gently. "Then I hope one day I can earn it." For the first time, Tomas looked at him with a small, respectful nod. That single gesture made Daniel feel something deep inside. It was not pride. It was peace. Later that day, Daniel met King Roland in the garden. The king was feeding birds near the fountain. He turned and smiled when he saw Daniel. "You look different today, young man," the king said kindly. "I feel different too," Daniel replied. "You taught me something without saying it directly. I saw how people here respect one another, not because of birth or name, but because of effort and honesty." The king nodded slowly. "Respect is not something that comes with your title, Daniel. It comes from how you treat others. You asked for a salute on your first day, but now you have earned something more valuable, a place of honor in someone's heart." Daniel felt grateful. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I came here to see your kingdom, but I ended up seeing myself." The king smiled warmly. "That is a rare kind of sight, and it will help you more than any privilege ever could." That afternoon, Daniel helped the kitchen staff with lunch. He cleaned a few tables, passed plates, and even joined the gardeners later to water the plants. The workers were surprised at first, but welcomed him kindly. They shared stories and laughter, and Daniel felt light, free from the weight of showing off or proving anything. When evening came, a small farewell ceremony was arranged for him. The royal family gathered in the main hall along with the staff. The queen handed him a small golden coin engraved with the royal seal. "This is a symbol of humility and respect," she said. "Keep it as a reminder of what you have learned." Daniel accepted it with both hands and bowed politely. He looked around at the faces of the people, the guards, the cooks, the gardeners, and he realized how much he had grown to admire them. Then something unexpected happened. As he turned to leave the hall, Tomas, the royal guard, stepped forward. He stood straight, lifted his hand, and gave Daniel a perfect royal salute. Everyone in the room watched quietly. Daniel's heart felt heavy and light at the same time. He had not asked for the salute. This time he had earned it. He stood there, not as a powerful man's son, but as someone who had learned what respect truly meant. He gave a small, respectful nod back, and the guard smiled faintly. After the ceremony, Daniel walked out to the garden one last time. The stars had begun to appear in the clear sky, and the palace lights glowed softly around him. He thought about how he had arrived with arrogance, and now he was leaving with gratitude. The chauffeur came to take him to the airport. As Daniel sat in the car, he held the golden coin tightly in his hand. He looked at the palace through the window, feeling thankful for the lessons he had learned there. When the car began to move, he whispered softly, "Respect is not given by demand. It is earned by heart." On his flight back home, Daniel wrote a short message in his notebook. It said, "Titles fade, names change, but kindness always stays." He smiled as he closed the notebook and leaned back on the seat. Weeks later, when he returned to his city, people around him noticed his change. He greeted everyone politely, treated workers kindly, and listened more than he spoke. His father, who had always seen him as proud and careless, was surprised by his calm behavior. One evening, his father asked him, "You seem different, son. What happened in that kingdom?" Daniel smiled and said, "I learned that respect cannot be demanded. It must be earned. I also learned that even a salute means nothing unless you deserve it." His father stayed silent for a moment and then nodded slowly. For the first time, there was quiet pride in his eyes. From that day on, Daniel lived with a new purpose. He used his influence to help others and supported young people who wanted to study or work honestly. He no longer looked for power or admiration. He wanted to make people feel respected, the way he had learned in the kingdom. Years later, when Daniel visited the kingdom again, he met guard Tomas once more. Tomas was now a senior officer, respected by all. When they saw each other, Tomas smiled and gave Daniel the same royal salute. Daniel returned it with a warm smile, understanding its value even more deeply now. They both stood there for a moment in silence. Two men who had taught each other something priceless, that real respect is never forced. It is earned through humility, courage, and kindness. As Daniel walked through the palace gates again, he felt grateful for that first mistake, the order he had once given out of pride. Because that mistake had become the beginning of his greatest lesson. And so the story of the salute did not end with arrogance. It ended with understanding, a reminder that no matter how high one stands, true greatness always comes from a humble heart.